Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can find out more about how to get involved by going to officehours.global. The first hour is really open questions. Once you've kind of found your way in, you become one of our producers. Your questions, your votes, all drive the conversation that we have every single day. First day is general questions. It's open to whatever you have questions about related to media or virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today we're going to have Paul Lombert here from Hedge. Hedge has made a lot of hedges, a lot of moves in the last week, and so there's a lot of different pieces of software. We're going to talk to Paul about how they're supporting video editors in video production with both their acquisitions as well as their software. So we'll be talking about that in the second hour. If you can do some research on Hedge and ask questions for the second hour, just make sure to tag them as Hedge as we move forward. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Bill, take it away.
Okay, our first one comes from Lion O'Goggin in Donegal, Ireland. That sounds lovely. And he says, I hear Alex mention Mukana every day. I have no idea what Mukana is and cannot seem to find an explanatory info for dummies through Google. Any advice? Welcome.
Oh, no, yeah, let's not give the email out there.
Oh, okay.
To the broadcast. Well, Liam, I think that I think you might have found it because you asked a question. so you are in Mukana, the house that you're looking around for. You're standing in the middle of. So you have found that is our Q&A system that we're managing all of this for. So you can chat as well as do Q&A, but that is what we're talking about. So you've made it. All right, next question.
Richard Lavery is up next in Belfast, UK. Alex, do you know what the average percentage of producers who come through to Mukana? When we have 150 people in Zoom, do they all come through to ask questions? And if not, what percentage does?
Typically, it's about 2/3 are in Mukana of whoever's up there. That's typically the running average are in Mukana. Now that's 2/3 of the people that are in Zoom. It's probably half of the folks that are in. Half of the people that are watching total. So you have people watching on YouTube and everything else. And so that's kind of the numbers as they sit right now. And we don't make, and I have to admit, we don't make a real hard try to make it any bigger. We create, you'll find that I create speed bumps in lots of places, and that's mostly to help sort folks out. so people, I want them to be a little more committed if they're going to start asking questions and so on and so forth. So we're not trying to, we make it a little bit difficult to get to a couple different things like Discord and Mukana and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the model. I don't know whether it's the best model, but it's the one we're using right now. And so far it's worked pretty well. Next question.
Comes from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. And he says, our Zoom rep mentioned a beta for Zoom Greenroom. Evidently, this will be added to Zoom webinars. Has anyone used Zoom Greenroom, and what are the functions, if so?
Have any of us seen Zoom Greenroom? We've heard about it. We've heard that it's coming, but we haven't actually seen the Greenroom. Right now, most of the time, we're using a separate space for that. And that's been one of the problems with webinars is that we couldn't do that, is that we didn't have a place where we could just put people into a separate room, prep them, and then seamlessly move them in. It'd be great if we had that. Go ahead, Rupert.
Just also keep in mind that some of the Zoom betas will be in NDAs. So if you choose to enroll in it, make sure that you may be subject to an NDA on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Richard Lavery's up next from Belfast, UK. And what do you think the barriers are for people getting involved in office hours? Are there areas we can make easier, even ahead of the 2.0 rollout, to increase the breadth and reach of the global conversation?
Go ahead, Stuart.
I think there are two major areas that people would see on perception. First is, this is a panel of old white guys. And I say that as an old white guy. So people will think that people of color or women aren't welcome when I'm pretty sure they are. And if they want to join in, they'll be made most welcome because they've got good opinions to add to the conversation. The other is there is a perception that a panel like this requires expensive hardware to be able to match the standard. I'm doing reasonably well on budget and secondhand gear. And if you listen to all the tips that come through here, you can probably find solutions to get you started. And once you get you started and you can build on that and then get a couple of clients under your belt, then you can add more gear and get even more professional and reach a higher standard.
I'm not trying to make it easy yet. So that's that. I think that's we're not trying that yet. So that's the bottom line. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. When would you use USB output of a Blackmagic design web presenter to bring in video content into a computer as a virtual camera versus the USB output of an Atem Mini?
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, in this case, they are very much identical, both in the chipset and in the pipeline. So the answer is if you have an SDI input, I would say that would be definitely one of them. And yeah, can't really think of one specifically other than that.
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so SDI, or if you have a Atem that is not one of the minis, so one of the rack mounts, the 1, 2, the 4 Constellation, then that's much easier just to plug it into the web presenter. It also works if you've just got like a remote with a camera directly to the web presenter back to the studio. So no Atem in the mix.
Go ahead, Richard.
It's a bit specific to us, but our use case at the moment requires a 4K signal into the web presenter, which the Atem can't handle. So the web presenter can, which means we can stick it into multi-views or program outs from an Atem, bigger Atem.
Yeah, and one of the things that the latency is a little higher on the web presenter than it is with the Ultra Studio or the Ultra Studio Mini by a couple frames. And so it's not something that we would use unless we had to. The good thing about it is that it works in almost everything. The older one, the newer one's a little more tweaky, but the older one will plug into almost any computer and look like a true webcam, which is, so I have them around. Excuse me, I have them around because they're kind of this Swiss Army knife of I can plug into any computer and have it show up as a webcam and have it work. Only at 720. This is the older one, but I know that I'll get video out the other end. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody caught this, but for the new HyperDeck Studios, they all have webcam out as well. So I'm kind of curious to see if that will serve the same purpose.
I think it will. I mean, I think that it's kind of amazing that we just have every single piece of every device starting to add the ability to do that. I'm assuming that the next generation of switchers will probably that Blackmagic releases will all have it. So pretty much all of them make it available to do that. And I wouldn't be surprised if all the switchers can stream, just kind of built into the chipset. If you can do it at $450 or $500 or whatever that the Pro is, you can do it for all the switchers. Go ahead, Carl.
Just quickly, yeah, the web presenters, all of them are a streaming solution as well as a webcam, whereas HyperDecks are just a webcam.
Yeah. Next question.
Comes from our own Guy Cochran here in the panel. What are some good ways to get SRT, the secure, reliable transport open source, feed into AWS, and why would you want to do so?
He's trying to throw a softball and no one's ready. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so I've got a little time with this, not a bunch, but one of the things I used was see if I can cut to it, a Pearl Nano. So this is on the sending side, and essentially super easy way to transit traffic, not just with SRT, but other protocols as well. And then on the receiving side, thus far, I've only used vMix as the side on the AWS side to take that SRT feed in.
Jim has a new camera. I just want to point that out. I don't know if this may not be a new camera. It's the first time I've seen it. Go ahead, Guy. It looks great.
Yeah. Jim, was that the encoder that you were using to send up a feed the other day? So
actually, the other day I used just straight vMix. So I just used my vMix PC here locally.
So just to have some SRT tests, Jim's that little candle down there in 9004. This is a 9-up box that I threw up on a Facebook user group called SRT and SRT Streaming User Group. And so basically what it is, it's hosted on AWS, and we're trying out all the different SRT software and hardware. I'd love to see your Pearl, but basically I want to spin this up in AWS every once in a while to let people push in SRT and see what it looks like. Because then we're taking this and pushing it to a 4K stream and cutting to each instance or doing 2-up, sourcing 9-up, 2-up, and bouncing around. But I've used Wirecast, vMix last night. We had Marcus from Trinidad coming in through vMix. We had Stan Chan coming in through Larix Broadcaster. So we're just trying out all these different encoders to see what kind of latency and what kind of picture we're getting in the difference between H.264 and H.265, and we're using SRT Mini Server to ingest as well as vMix, as well as High Vision Gateway. So a couple different ways of receiving up in AWS as well. So, and the reason why you would want to do this is something like getting out of a place like NAB where we might get like really low bandwidth. So if we can get out of there H.265, this might be a way to do some kind of remote contribution. So
it's cool.
Just running some tests.
Very cool. Next question.
Rupert McRae is up next from Dallas, Texas. What is the current preferred etiquette for posting links in questions in Mukana?
We almost never read them. So if you put a link in, I mean, you kind of have to ask a general question, but if you're pushing a link to it, the problem is that we're getting them in real time. And so we almost never click on them. So it's usually easier to ask the question. You can put them in. I don't have any problem with putting them in. It's just very rare do I actually have time to click on them in real time. So I think that's the challenge for us. Go ahead, Leland.
The only other request was that no affiliate links be dropped, even though Alex's software automatically finds those and removes them for you. It's something to avoid.
Yeah, we don't do affiliate links here in the chat or in the questions. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
When I see something to put up on screen for scraping, the one thing I look for is to see, does this page have a lot of ads on it? Does it have a lot of pop-ups on it? Could it show up a pop-up afterwards? And for stuff like that,
right,
I'll definitely not even show it. But anything with products, we'll try and show. But once again, if we find it in time.
Generally, our preference is if you're going to put a link in to send it to a page that is like a product page on a website that doesn't have any ads. Next question.
Doug Ferguson here in the panel from Indianapolis, Indiana says AMD or Intel for media creation. What's the current thinking?
Go ahead, Jason.
I would say M1 for media creation, but no. To answer your question, I think AMD in the last couple of cycles has absolutely eclipsed Intel.
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, I'll double that. So Apple Silicon for media creation, 100%.
Yeah. Go ahead, Neil.
I was going to say an AMD 3990X Threadripper 64 core, but that's just my humble opinion.
Very good. Go ahead, Stuart.
It's actually the wrong question, Doug. AMD or Intel, it doesn't matter. The software runs equally well on both. It's just the level of processing power you will get bang for the buck. Mm-hmm. If you need to answer a question about media creation, it should be AMD versus NVIDIA, in which case CUDA cores for rendering become far more important than the CPU.
Sometimes. But AMD plus NVIDIA is, in my opinion, the best solution for those things. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas comes back with another one, and this time it is other than Beelink and Intel NUC, what other DC-powered PCs can the panel recommend with firsthand experience? Modest specs, 12 to 15 volt DC would be ideal, say for a mobile vehicle use.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm going to surprise everyone. There is a DC kit available for NUC, or not for NUCs, for Mac Minis. So your little ones from about 2012 onwards, you can run them on DC. If you're requiring something in a car, go with the NUC because they're cheaper.
Next question.
David Brady in New York is up next, and he says rebuilding workspaces at the plant, and he's torn between Atem Mini and TV Studio HD. What components are needed to equate to the ISO Extreme, Web Presenter, or HyperDeck, or something else?
Go ahead, Carl.
I'll just get the ISO Extreme and a bidirectional. Handful of bidirectionals if you need them for SDI. So if you need SDI, the bidirectional, it's got super sources. Like, that is the future. I'm pretty sure that they're going to be updating those in-between switches between the Extreme and the Constellation in the next 12 to 15 months. But I would get an Extreme and a handful of bidirectional so you can do camera control and stuff to SDI cameras.
Go ahead, Jason.
I'll answer the question as asked. In order to get the same thing, and keep in mind, I love the TV Studio HD, but it does not reconvert. Only the 4K Pro reconverts. So you would actually need a HyperDeck on every single input in order to do ISO recording, a web presenter to get your stream out, and at that point, you would still also be limited to a single DVE.
And you wouldn't have the super source if you went to the Extreme. so that would be the other advantage of the. There's a lot of limitations to the TV Studio at this point. I would do everything I could not to buy anything until October. So like if you have to, you'd buy it now. But we're now in that once you get within about 2 months of NAB, it's usually if you have to buy whatever when you need it because there's a job and you have to sort it out. But if you don't, I would wait until mid October. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Newman, Georgia, our friend says, I know you've demonstrated in the past, Alex, but will you teleistrate on a Wacom tablet and the older MacBook Pro once more, please?
There it is. I did. So I think that what Tony wants is an explanation of what that is, and just really quickly, what we what we have here is a Wacom tablet, a Mac Mini, and an Atem, and the USB. There's two things that come out of the Wacom tablet. One is the USB, and the other is the HDMI. The HDMI is what runs the screen on the Cintiq. So the HDMI is coming out of my Atem Extreme ISO, and the USB is going into the computer. The computer is going into the Extreme as just a black and white image. You can use a drawing app that just doesn't have any graphics on it, and it goes in here. So basically, you're drawing. The Mac Mini is just responding to it, and then it's going in as a single source. That's just being downstream keyed over top of the video. As literally as a key. This is just green fill with that, and then that comes out and I see it in my Cintiq. Now you can do it without the screen. You can do it with an iPad just straight into it. There's a lot of ways to do that without that. I find it difficult to use without being able to see what I'm drawing. It's just not the same, but it can be done. And yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Does that Cintiq have a loop through or an HDMI out, or does that dead end the HDMI signal you're feeding it?
It dead ends. That's why the ISO is so much better for me, because I have two. The Extreme is so much better for me because I have two HDMI outs. Now I was still able to do it with a smaller one because I only need the USB-C. So the USB-C the program goes out to the to Zoom or whatever else I'm streaming to, and the HDMI has always been used as the input for the Cintiq. So if you want to split it, you need to put a splitter before the Cintiq and split it out if you needed to do that. Next question.
Juan C. Robles in Mexico says, today office hours email only has today's schedule. Is this intentional?
I needed to check some scheduling. I realized I hadn't followed up with a couple folks, and so I didn't want to run an announcement for later in the week until I had we have a pretty high profile person potentially on Wednesday, and I just wanted to make sure. So anyway, I just needed to do a check before I put it all out there. So next question.
Paul Prusakowski in Gainesville, Florida says, what are the key differences between using Parsec or Teradici for managing multiple instances of vMix in the cloud?
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one is that Parsec, you can have multiple people on the same instance at the same time. I don't use it a whole lot that way. Chirig does. He's done like over 100 shows using Parsec with his team, and he's got multiple people logged in at the same time. Teradici is just one user at a time. The other thing is that Teradici costs money. Parsec is free unless you go to the gaming one, which is the Pro license, and then that gives you lets you go to 10-bit color. Teradici, it's very smooth. Parsec's developed for gamers, so it is pretty smooth as well. I haven't again tried the 10-bit version, but I hear it works well. Teradici has just been super solid. As long as Greg Gibson was letting me know today, actually, that the only time he had issues is when you're using the local USB. So that's another thing. Key difference is that Teradici will allow you to use local USB input devices. So you can use your Stream Deck locally. But what he's found is that VPNing it, I believe, through Zero-Tier or something like that is the way to make it all come together and work. And he's done a lot of shows that way.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, it should be obvious, but you can't do the Kessel run in under 12 teradicis.
All right, Rupert.
Thank you.
Maybe Guy or somebody can answer this, but is there a difference in the behavior when either one disconnects? Does it appear to the computer that the monitors have disconnected?
That I'm not sure of. And actually, while we're on the subject, the other one that a lot of the guys are using is Nice DCV. And so with it used to be something that was a little rough, but now a lot of guys are using it in production with vMix. So Teradici for the main cutting machine, contribution machine, so you don't have to pay that 50 cents an hour, use nice DCV. So that's the way, that's the solution for now.
Next question.
Rupert McCrae here in the group says, can anyone recommend a lightweight host application for WLM on Windows?
Go ahead, Carl.
So on Windows, Reaper would probably be the best. So $60 for non-commercial use. And it supports everything. So that's one of the best things about Reaper is the VST plugins. Whereas a lot of the other ones that are a bit more proprietary, like even Adobe's Audition, is limited to certain things. But Reaper's I think designed for plugins. It's so good.
Next question.
Next question. Guy Cochran says, can Neil share with us how he's being lit? You come in looking that good.
I am happy to do so. I recently got back into the studio at Google for Startups. I have a 90 by 90 centimeter LED key light. I have basically 4x4 Kinos, but they're LEDs on 245-degree angles. I've got a reflector coming underneath me in order to light this area right here underneath my hat so I don't have a shadow being cast under my face. I've got a background light with a gobo in it, and I threw that out of focus so I can get a deeper depth of field on myself with the camera, but still get some faux greater depth of field. And I've got 2 backlight kickers that are more daylight balanced in order to separate me a little bit from the background, give a little bit of a highlight to my black hat so it doesn't drop off into shadow.
Go ahead, Guy.
And are you warming up that light? Because I see what looks to be a white chair behind you but yet you look really like you have a little bit of warmth to you. Is that key light being drilled a little bit more towards tungsten from the daylight?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, looks great. Yeah. Welcome back, Neil.
Thank you. I missed you guys. I really did.
We miss you too. So it's good to have you here. Next question.
Jasmine Lee in Singapore says, for artistic swimming, do the above and underwater speakers need to be configured differently to remain in sync for the swimmers?
Go ahead, Carl.
In theory, yes, but technically no. So speed of sound in water is about 1,500 meters per second, and in sea level atmosphere, it's about 340 meters per second. So it's about, what's that? Almost 5 times, between 4 and 5 times faster in water. But it's only traveling maybe 10 meters in the pool, maybe 15 meters in the pool. So no, it'd be like a millisecond, I guess, maybe a couple of milliseconds.
Yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, Carl covered the main one, but there is one other, and that is that the way sound propagates through any medium, the high frequencies are taken out first, and water is a denser medium. So you'll find that the speakers that are used, there is actually a proper name for them. They're not actually called speakers, but they will provide a lot of mid-range, maybe not so much highs and bass, because remember, the performers don't actually need to hear the melody. They need to hear the beat for the timing. And that's what they go through. Beyond that, there's no difference.
Next question. I can't hear you, Bill.
I'm sorry. Anthony B. in Bridgewater, New Jersey. First hour probably covered already, but any tips for reducing latency for Zoom? He's used an Atem Mini Pro with a max delay set for a wireless Rode Lav, but still gets lots of lag. 3 cameras, MacBook Pro 2015 connected to via Wi-Fi to a corporate internet connection.
I don't know. Wi-Fi won't affect your, well, it shouldn't affect your latency, but it will affect your stability. Wi-Fi is not built for a continuous video or audio connection, but definitely not video connection. It doesn't matter how fast it is. People often say, I have 1 gig connection or a 10 gig connection. It doesn't matter. What it matters is the number of devices trying to hit the AP. So if you have 1 device, if you're the only one that's hitting that AP, it'll be almost as good as Ethernet. Just that almost nobody has that. Go ahead, Carl.
So it looks like they're sending audio through the Atem Mini. Don't do that. Let's just go audio interface.
You can avoid it. You can avoid it. A lot of us.
So yeah, so that's going to be the biggest problem there. So just use a cheap audio interface straight into your computer, along with it, in parallel with the Atem as far as the video, and then you can adjust your audio interface as far as any latency you may need to do. But the Atem, putting sound through the Atem, that's going to cause lag.
Yeah, Leland?
I would suppose with 3 cameras on a Wi-Fi system, you may be running into a bandwidth issue with that 2015 device, but I would double check where you're at on those speeds.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, last thought, it's entirely possible that you are saturating your USB bandwidth, and that may be causing all of your problems. Just straight away unplug everything but exactly what you need and see if that fixes your problem.
And 2015 is 2015 MacBook Pro is it MacBook Pro? Is that right? Is a it's on the outer edge of what can do Zoom at this point. So you just have to know that too. Go ahead, Neil.
If you're using a USB dongle to connect to that, your dongle might be reaching its bandwidth limit. You might want to try getting a different dongle for the other side of the computer and plugging in different devices into both dongles so that you don't max out your limit of data throughput.
And in general, I don't know but I don't plug my video camera into anything except directly into the computer. As far, through one thing, I don't put any dongles in between video and almost never put it through audio. It's just dongles are usually not cohesive, not conducive to making that work. Go ahead, Rupert.
If he's going through the Atem, if it's all set to frame rates higher than 30, could that slow that down somehow?
Maybe, I don't know. Jeffrey?
A big thing is to just determine whether the lag's coming through the Atem or it's coming through the computer. And to do that, you can go straight to use the Ethernet to go straight to like Facebook or YouTube, a private channel, so you can see if that lag happens. And if it happens there, you have to deal with it at the Atem. If it doesn't happen there, then you have to deal with it at the laptop.
Next question.
Gary Harper, London in the UK again, looking at upping my webinar visuals with a Canon M50 Mark II, a Canon 22mm lens, and Elgato key lights. Already have an EV RE20 mic into an SSL2 Plus. Any suggestions over and above this for better alternatives? Thank you.
Go ahead, Carl.
Background. So think about what your background is. It can be a practical background like I have, or something like Alex has, or it's just a background to put up. With lights, that's going to be the interesting one. You've got an f2 lens, that's great. It's going to let in heaps of light. That's not a problem. You're going to get a bit of a blurry background too with f2 as well. But with you want to get like a hair light. And now the hair light needs to be more of a sharp light. So you don't want a diffused panel. Diffused panel is really good in front of you. Behind you want something a bit more of a sharp light to separate you from the background.
The 22 is going to be really wide. You're going to have to get pretty close to that camera to make 22.
45, Alex, when you change it on that camera, it's going to be, 35, 40. 35.
Yeah, I still think you're going to need it a little longer. Go ahead, Neil.
Maybe think about the audio quality of the room, the SPL levels, and any other background noise that you might be able to eliminate prior to your recordings or streaming or what have you. So that could help improve the audio quality without even having to spend money on a new mic.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I love the RE20, but it is an extremely picky microphone when it comes to just preamps. I don't know if the SSL2 is pushing it as best as it can be pushed. That's my only input.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Carl might know this one more accurately, but I'm pretty sure the M50 is one of the ones that Canon rolled out a firmware upgrade to allow it to be a USB webcam.
Yeah. So the M50 Mark II can pretty much do everything. Yeah, you're right. I know what you're trying to get that the bokeh. So you're trying to get that that fast lens, because it is 35-ish. So it depends how far away you are. The good thing about the Canon is you can do pixel for pixel match. So you can do the crop. So you don't have to go full center width. So you can actually output 1080 with a crop. That way you can do that as well.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, is back in again. When would you use a Doro meter versus a WLM meter? And would the Doro meter, along with VLM, benefit us at office hours as a final output meter?
I just use Doro meters because they look cool. the old mechanical ones. I don't know about the digital ones, but I don't find the Duro meters at this point would be particularly useful in our application. But they are beautiful pieces of machinery. That's all I'd say. Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles is up next. Is there a quality difference between a Blackmagic Studio Camera and the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K?
Yeah, Carl?
They are identical cameras as far as the sensor and the electronics. This one only records Blackmagic RAW. It doesn't record.
And we are talking about the new studio camera, not the older studio camera.
Yeah, so this has the exact same electronics and McGubbins inside as the Pocket Cinema 4K, but yeah, it doesn't record ProRes. That's why these cameras are a bit cheaper. They're not paying anyone to do H.264, ProRes, anything like that. They're just doing Blackmagic Raw because they own it. They have to pay for it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
The huge difference that you're going to see, I guess. Oh, wait, it's 4K. Okay. My understanding was it was Canon. It was Canon glass. That was my thought. I thought he had said 6K, so forget about it.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Sky.
My question to Carl is the photo that you just showed, that Ethernet cable off the side, what's the distance between, I assume that's the, could you quickly do just a quick debrief on what that device is underneath and why the Ethernet cable is so critical?
So this is the studio converter. Essentially what it is, it's running essentially a fiber down copper, if that makes sense. So it's empty fiber, which you'd see at any football game, how they run the cameras, they run power and everything through it. So talkback, program return, all those kind of things would run through it. This is doing the same thing. It's doing it through a 10 gig line. It'll run up to about 300 feet to 100 meters would be probably the limit of 6A. So Cat 6A cables, that's going to be the limit. Be interesting if you can send power. But the interesting thing is I've noticed with the power, it sends out 90 watts, but the camera only takes about 35 to 40. So they've given themselves 100% headroom for distance. So they're going to lose power with the distance of cable because it's a resistor. That's good because it's actually sending twice as much power than the camera actually needs at full power. So the camera's full power is at 45. So that's pretty clever of them.
Yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
Two thoughts that I had later after the BMD presentation with a light that just fell over. Quickly, do we expect a EF mount version of that camera?
No.
And, okay, no, not even based on the 6K
no,
pocket?
because it won't fit PL or B4 lenses still.
Yeah. Yes, it's really designed as a studio. I think that you won't get to the EFs until you get to either the Pocket Cinemas or the Ursas. Yeah, I'd be highly surprised if they ever built a studio that took EF lenses. So, Courtney?
And a question, if anyone's looked into it, if you're running it with that broadcast converter over Ethernet, is there a way to break out power from the camera if you wanted to run an external viewfinder that can tilt down from the camera? Or would you have to?
There is no power out. You need to go up to the OSA broadcast to get that.
So the 4 pin on the bottom of that, you can't pull power out if you're sending PoE in?
No, so there's a power in only.
Okay.
Hence the price. That's where the price comes in.
Yep. Next question.
Craig Kadelki in Toronto, Canada is up next. I have a damaged, repair is more than a new one, iPhone SE V2. Is there a way to harvest any of the cameras? I know that a lot of notebook cameras are standard USB connections. Are iPhones the same?
No. Good, Carl.
No.
Yeah. This is kind of a mostly dead versus all dead conversation. All there really is to do is go through their pockets for change. Go ahead, Jason.
No, that's pretty much what I was going to add. Great question, Craig. But yeah, the iPhone, ever since the very first generation, has been completely proprietary when it comes to the camera.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
It's not impossible, and it might be a fun weekend project for somebody, but the cost would probably overshadow it, and you could probably buy a webcam for cheaper.
I would take the innards out and put it sink it into plexiglass or something like that to make it as a little trinket on your desk. That's about all you can do with it.
Good for a paperweight.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Surface mount is hard to fix at home. Stephen Smart of Glasgow is up next. My laptop has stopped recognizing external hard drives via USB port. Is this a windowed driver problem or something else maybe?
Go ahead, Rupert.
It could be. I just have a few troubleshooting ideas. I would check for pending updates in Windows and make sure you're up to date with that, and then restart. Next, then disconnect everything else, and just start with one hard drive and then restart, see if it recognizes it. Then if these are spinning hard drives, they're going to be particularly dependent on power. So check that you're not overloading your computer with other USB devices that are drawing power. So you can also try a powered USB hub in line with that. Then checking your device manager, Windows Device Manager. Make sure you've got nothing there with an exclamation or a problem. If you do, you can uninstall that and let it reboot again and re-recognize it. And then also finally checking your, with a drive connected, checking your disk manager to see whether the machine is physically recognizing the disk and not presenting the logical volume into Windows.
Go ahead, Jason, then Bill, and Leland, but real quick.
That was a beautiful list, and I'm only going to say the things that he didn't. BIOS updates are very important, especially if it's a laptop. Also, in control panel, rip the entire USB system out and force it to redetect. That may very well also help you.
Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
Another 101 thing, just try a different port on the computer. I have had the actual USB port on a laptop go bad. If you switch it to the next one, it works fine.
Go ahead, Leland.
Yep, USB ports fail very often. Try a different device other than a drive on that port first. See if that device works. Another quick hack fix is on the USB device. If it's an attached cable, you may have to pull it apart, take that little metal flange off, stick a piece of cardboard or paper in there to push that little pin set along the USB set inside your computer. Sometimes those get loose and you can tighten them down a little bit more to make them fit, or buy a new cable.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, I've watched plenty of streams from gamers that use water-cooled PCs. However, I've never heard any noise from the cooling system in their audio. Would that be a function of mic placement choice, noise reduction plugins on the PC, or both?
Go ahead, Jason.
It could be a function of a whole bunch of things, but in this case, it all comes back to, if it's just liquid, sound travels differently in liquid, period.
Go ahead, Neil.
I mean, one of they could also have just a fanless, not a fanless, but a silent power supply. I mean, you could get if your computer takes 300 watts, you get an 850 titanium power supply that can run in silent mode. You're only pulling like 40% of its power. It's not going to kick on its fans. There's just a lot of ways to do it. And also, if the computer's way over there and your mic is over here, law of diminishing returns dictates that you're just not going to hear that noise.
We've definitely been able to build 5U computers that are, even with the fans running, just the type of fans we put in and everything else, you can't hear them sitting right next to you. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I've also seen some gamers, that's not their primary machine that you see in this in the frame. That's just a setup with a fan going at its lowest rate.
Yeah, go ahead, Leland.
A couple things when it comes to fan noise. One, there could be the fact that this water-cooled PC is not running any fans, obviously. You can still deal with fan settings inside your BIOS that will allow you to track the temperatures in which those fans actually come on. So if you're really good at tweaking your fans, you can keep them pretty quiet if you're running SSDs and M2 drives and things of that nature. But the harder driving hardware that you're going to have, like hard drives of 7,200 RPM mechanicals, those are going to take more power. So they're obviously going to put a little more emphasis in your machine. It's going to make your fans drive harder.
Next question.
Carlos Ronconi in Rio de Janeiro says, a DSLR is too expensive to get down here, so I'm thinking of investing in a Logitech BRIO. Is that in accordance with the Office Hours 2.0 standards?
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, not knowing the Office Hours 2.0 standards, I'm going to guess that the quality of your lighting is going to directly determine the quality of your video, especially if you're getting the right number of dots.
The BRIO itself can do it. It's just a matter of having good lighting and good background. Absolutely. We'd love to have you. Next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California is up next. He says, what lenses will fit the new Blackmagic Studio Camera with Servo Zoom?
Go ahead, Carl.
So there are 3 is currently on sale. One's just been discontinued recently. So that'll be the 14 to 42 Panasonic G space X, the 45 to 175. There we go. It's a nice list. Which is also the G space X, and then you got the Olympus 14 to 42, but the one they have on all the promotional material is the 12 to 55, which is the EZ lens, and that one's the one that's just been discontinued, but you'll be able to pick it up pretty good prices on Amazon.
I wonder if they knew that it was going to be discontinued when they designed the whole thing around it and all their PR, because the things it's not like they're probably not talking that much to each other. It's not like they're having conversations with Olympus about it. I doubt. And so I think that they put them all in there, and then Olympus decided to, we're not selling enough of these. And now Olympus might be trying to turn the thing back on again, because a lot of cameras, probably more lenses than they've ever sold before could be sold in the next, 6 months. It's funny when companies make those errors. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he says, what would you recommend for radio TV style processing for streams? Would the use of an EQ multiband compressor and limiter be enough? Saw this Waves article and had some ideas, and there's a link there.
I mean, one of the things that the TV does is it's kind of they do pretty hard limits, to keep the signal legal, and they do a lot of compression to pull it together. And there are specific pieces of hardware. Linear Acoustics makes a fair number of them that you process for TV, and that's why TV sounds different than most of what we do here. I don't know if it sounds better or worse. It just sounds different. Go ahead, Bill, and then Jason. Pretty quick. Can't hear you.
Very much what Alex is talking about. In broadcast, you could get big fines from the FCC if your transmitter got over a particular power level. So there was always brick wall compression and a very narrow bandwidth that was acceptable for those signals going out. So that sound, a very in-your-face present sound, became associated with TV and radio broadcast. It's not natural. It doesn't allow for a lot of dynamic range, but it always gets the sound through. So some people like that.
All right, go ahead, Jason.
The only thing that I would add to that is I'm not sure if you actually really want to go for that. It is becoming very rapidly an out-of-date thing, but look at companders. A compander is a compression and expander unit, and that'll give you that really narrow, tight signal.
It's not very, when you actually wear it as it has headphones, it's not a very pleasing thing to do for a long period of time, for a lot of that. So you just also want to think through that as well. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
It also depends on how you're bringing into the stream. If you're talking like direct into the board and your board sounds great, then you should be able to send it to the stream with little to no extra effects. If you're miking a room and bringing that into a stream, you might have to do some effects just to keep the bounce down.
I mean, the main thing is that one of the number one complaints you'll get on a live stream is that it's not loud enough. Like, that is the number one, is that it's not loud enough, because we put production audio through at -10 or -12. So oftentimes we will push our streams to -3 or even negative, like right at 0. Like have a soft limiter at -3 and then a brick wall at 0 and push it all the way up to it, because it just eliminates people's complaints about their speakers. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up again. Could you see Isadora being a flexible control meeting interface for large AV systems? One issue I saw is that there aren't any controls that I could see that could change their state based on a numeric value.
I think all the controls can change their state based on a numeric value. I mean, I think it's kind of how it's designed. So, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know if I understand that question, but I absolutely think that anything that has a control interface that has a language that Isadora can speak, you could use it as an interface to do that, in my opinion. Now that there may be applications where Universe makes more sense from a UI design. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I think there's two different sides of Isadora. There's the kind of nodal compositor component where when you're building the patches, and then there's a separate, and I don't remember the terminology for it, the control side. So you can essentially build custom UIs for people that don't need to understand how the patch is built.
Yeah. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas, here on the panel often says, when using audio follows video on an Atem Mini, will the audio fade between inputs during a slow transition, or will a hard in and hard out take place?
Go ahead, Jason.
It's actually a preference that you can set in the Atem settings. You can set it to crossfade, or you can set it to hard cut between effects. So it's up to you.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael here again. As I explore Isadora, what has stood out for me is that the user interface can be a bit rough around the edges. Do you see the user interface improving as Isadora gains more popularity?
I don't see the interface changing dramatically. It's a mature product, so I don't think that it's going to give you a lot of users that are very committed to the way it looks and the way it works right now. I would doubt that it would change dramatically. Next question.
Rupert McRae of Dallas, Texas, again here on the panel. If broadcasters adopting SMPTE 2110 are making 9-figure investments in the new technology, must they and their financiers be pretty confident about their future in some way, even if it does look different to the landscape now?
Go ahead, Carl.
So 2110's been around for some time. It's just that the hardware, so the standard has been formalized for some time, and they're adding JPEG XS as well to it, new as well. But they have business modeling for these large corporations to price out and know exactly what part needs to go where before they actually go buying it, of course. And they'll speak to providers. They'll speak to the companies that actually make the stuff to know what they can get, how much they can get it for, when they can get it. So it is a big project for these larger, let's say broadcasters, but they've got people who they hire that just do this kind of thinking inside those corporations.
And usually it's not necessarily an original outlay either. I mean, most of these larger companies have a set schedule for when they're going to upgrade things. So it's not a matter of they already plan to upgrade. It's just a matter of what they're upgrading to. And most of those schedules line up with the U.S. Elections. So we're probably not going to see anything dramatic until 2024. But 2023, 2024, and looking at it in 2022 is probably, but that's where you'll see a big jump, is everyone prepping for that, because they basically pay off all the equipment in that 1 year based on advertising. Go ahead, Courtney.
Also, 2110 is an extensible standard, so it has the ability to change with the technology as it changes. So it can adapt, so you don't have to worry about a dead ending specific standard, tying yourself to a dead standard.
Yeah, and a lot of times, again, with these larger companies, they're purchasing these inside of quarterly estimations and calculations and everything else. So I think that the reason that it moves very slowly is they want to make sure. The reason 2110 is taking so long is because they want to make sure they're not going to change it. so you work on all of that first, and then you go, okay, this is the way we're going to do this, and now everyone starts doing it. And I think we're just about to see that push. Next question. Can't hear you. Go ahead, Bill. I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York, purchased a JBL powered speaker, the Eon 610, for a gig, but ended up not needing it. Was this a decent choice for feeding music into a medium-sized room or backyard, or should I return it for something else?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfect for any type of speaking gigs, any type of single person musicians, karaoke night, or anything like that. Inside in a room or anything like that, you'll probably be able to use it in many different situations. Just keep in mind, it's technically not a waterproof speaker. You can use it outside, but don't keep it outside all the time.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, there are tons of those out there. A lot of little one-man band playing in a lounge kind of things use those JBL Eons and things like that. There's really two, I think, concepts of how you do if you want music outside. That's kind of PA style. You can do small tweeter arrays with a subwoofer, or you can do these integrated units. They tend to get bigger to get low end. So you tend to have more carry stuff with the single full big driver with a horn on it than you do with the small biamp stuff, but that's a choice.
It'll work great as long as the base of the speaker is at about 5 feet from the ground. Like that's about the right, 4.5 to 5 feet is about the height you want that speaker to sit. I used to use a lot that are very similar to that, and I think I used to own like 8 of those. So they're great speakers. Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle is up next, and Guy says, Felipe did one of the best presentations here on office hours, with tech and our knowledge constantly changing. Is there anything that he would do differently now?
Well, no, not really, not right now.
Very good. That's good. It's great. It was a great. What were you using again for the? I think it was very early on for us, but what were you using for the transitions?
I was using flying keys as what do you call macros on the Atem Mini Pro or Atem Mini Extreme.
Yeah, because I know that we've started doing things that are similar with Mix Effect Pro, and it's just been it's kind of been life changing, for us.
Yeah.
Of just being able to do those transitions. Next question.
Gary Harper in London, in the UK, up next. What are the panel's thoughts on the new Sony ZV E10 camera, a capable all-arounder for streaming, perhaps?
Go ahead, Stuart, then Noah.
Just based on a quick look through Sony's website, it's got one obvious advantage, and that is an AU $1,200 price tag. That's brilliant for this sort of application for an APS-C camera. Being an alpha, it'll have the same basic chipset inside it as the A64, like the, 58 through 6400 they've got now. The only negative I could see is it's not going to be controlled from an Atem Mini switcher.
Yeah. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I actually did a video on my YouTube channel about this, but specifically, I would encourage you not to use the USB as a webcam source and go through an ATEM because it's relying on the camera to do that hardware processing essentially. But it does look like a really valuable option.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carl.
So I would push towards the Canon M50 Mark II, mainly because two reasons. One, it does the same features, USB out for webcam, but also you can get a very cheap adapter to EF lenses, and then you got the whole EF lenses. And then if you choose to upgrade to a 6K, then your EF lenses will follow you through.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, it's not a good idea to have a camera that does your streaming with very, very, very few exceptions. If you can go through a $300 Atem Mini, please do it.
Next question.
Comes from Douglas Carmichael again, and he says, I've been struggling with a vexing inter-switch connectivity issue in my Cisco Connected Network Associate studies. Would AH be the best forum to ask for help on it, or the Discord? Maybe that meant office hours.
Yeah, or after hours.
After hours, there you go.
So yeah, that's the kind of thing. I mean, after hours is much more casual, so you have to see who's up there. But I would definitely check in, and if you see some of our network experts up there, that is a great place to kind of dig through, trying to figure that out. I mean, that's the kind of thing we want to kind of work through if we're having issues. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, would there be any way to lock an Isadora patch so that operators could use it but not alter it?
I think that's the mode that Jim was talking about earlier, is that you can set up an interface for that where they don't have any access to the back end. They just have access to the front end. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, Andy is saving me in the chat. File, password protect, done.
Oh, for the actual thing. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andy. And we probably have room for another question or two before the top of the hour. So if you've got a couple other questions, so this might be a good time. Let's go ahead and jump into the last question we have right now for the first hour.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California gets the nod for maybe the last one, unless you pop up here. Could Apple and or other manufacturers add a compressor or limiter to its output? Would love for more consistent audio chains for certain content.
Go ahead, Jason.
I will remind you that Apple has since I don't even know, but for a very long time built in a really, really great compressor and or limiter just straight away that you can put very easily into your audio chain.
And where do you put that in the audio chain?
I would put it in right at the very end using Audio Hijack, and it's built in.
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so Loopback and Audio Hijack are simply front ends to Core Audio's features. So by using those, you get access to what Apple actually has underneath the hood.
And go ahead, Jeffrey.
More consistent would mean actual hardware, which would mean the laptop would be a lot bigger, and they probably wouldn't want to do that.
But yeah, for most of us, we would use Audio Hijack to solve that problem. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I guess I should clarify. Sorry about that. I guess iPhone specific or mobile specific, if there's some sort of output for headphones.
Yeah. I think about that a lot with Apple TV because the trailers app in the Apple TV is 10 dB louder than everything else on the Apple TV. So I literally have to turn down the tuner by 10 dB before I play a trailer. It's painful. Go ahead, Carl.
There is a feature in settings where you can limit, like they used to have back on the old iPods, where it's like essentially if you're giving your iPhone or iPod Touch to a child, you limit it, I think it's to 60% of maximum volume.
Jason, real quick, we're going to move fast.
No, nothing else to add.
Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. I'm sorry. I'm almost sure it's no, but is there a simple software way to merge two Zoom meetings?
I think the technical term for that is niet. So, Leland.
Nothing simple, but vMix has been the go-to to combine a meeting with a webinar so far. Wirecast could do the same thing, as could OBS if it was tuned properly. Any switching software would be able to pull that connection off if done with NDI and a couple other features.
Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. What's the correct way to combine the channels of a stereo headphone output into a single mono channel like an IFB so that both channels can still be heard at equal volume?
Go ahead, Carl. I'm just going to go to Carl real quick because we're going to keep moving.
So you can actually just get an adapter like an arm's reach, like this one. So you can actually get one that is stereo to mono. This is actually a little bit of a TWRS one, but you can get them JCAR for people in Australia. So essentially what you want is you actually want to probably do it on hardware, and it stops any phase cancellations that you may get if you do it the other way.
And you can get a series of adapters for that. You know, you can have one that goes out that handles both channels the way Carl showed it, but I have lots of adapters that are TRS to TS, TS to TRS, TRS to TRRS, TS to TRR, you know, like all of those things. And having a little bag of quarter XLR and, you know, XLR you don't have the problem, but quarter and 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter is super useful. I would highly recommend hardware components. One thing to think about is using cables that do it as opposed to adapters. Adapters will add leverage to your connection. So if you have a long adapter, especially if you're doing 1/4 inch into 3.5, I know I just used two different English to metric, but a 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch, when you go into those, you have a big thing there. And if you push down on it, it's going to destroy what you have in your thing. So it's better to have a cable that does it than an actual node that pops out. Next, last question for the first hour.
Rupert McRae, Dallas, Texas. Are there any notable Guinness World Records held in the world of production? And what would be some good ones to beat or new ones to set?
We should start setting them because there's none of them out there. We could get, you know, we have 3210, you know, I've got a 50 by 50 stage. We could invite, I know folks at the Guinness Book, we could invite them over. All they have to do is sit over here and we have like most cables rolled at one time, 10. You know,
that last question would be great. The most adapters in a single line. We could do like a 1/4 mile.
I don't think, but the thing is at the beginning, the question is how hard do we want to make it for someone to break it? Because at the beginning we could have like 10 and it would be like, okay, no one's ever done that. No one's ever had someone at the Guinness Book of World Records like do that, you know. So there's you know, in an open, it's a really a space open for us getting lots of world records. Then each one of us could have a badge that said world record holder. Go ahead, Jason.
How many concatenated RCA before you get a ground loop? You know, something fun like that.
Exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
Just the number of hours, we're going to hit, what, 500 shows? I don't know if that's somewhere on the record books, you know?
I don't know how we define it, but maybe, yeah. The problem is with the Guinness Book of World Records, you kind of usually have to have them certify it while they do it. We've done a couple streams with them. So it's like a certification of they have to be there and process. And Jeffrey?
One that I know of is the most guitar pedals that are chained together. I think it's like 200 and something, but yeah, that's
over
the one
1,000.
I know of.
It's over 1,000.
I do think technically using our numbers, we may actually be getting to a point of the most used. I don't know. There's probably big corporations that have more than us, but we have a lot of hours in Zoom. like because it keeps track of your total used hours across the entire group of everybody in it. And I think that we could be I don't know if we have the Guinness Book of World Records, but we could be competitive, you know, in that area. All right, so we're going to change subjects, change gears here for the second hour. We've got Paul Lombert here. Paul, where are you coming in from?
Eindhoven in the Netherlands.
Oh, excellent. And so we're really glad to have you, Paul. And we just saw that you've made some moves over the last week, and I very quickly reached out and said, "Hey, we'd love to have Paul on. Let's talk about Hedge." So
thanks for having me.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up creating Hedge?
I'm a sound engineer. I did live music. I toured with bands. Had a dab in broadcast sound because in winter there wasn't much to do in live sound. So then you start working broadcast sound. And through the course of the years, I got asked to do some weird projects in broadcast. And one of those was a Dutch TV show, a registration of basically a day for schools called Challenge Day. And they recorded it on 5Ds. And they had 15 5Ds going on. Because they wanted really small format cameras. And then they had the challenge that they needed to get it into Avid overnight, synced, 15 cameras, 12 hours a day, all H.264.
In what year was this?
Yes. This was started in 2011. So, 10 years ago now.
Right. How did you approach that?
Well, which problem?
Well, I know what we're going to get to. We're going to get to the whole what you do now, but I'm very curious how you approach 15 cameras, 12 hours a day, getting it to an Avid the next morning? How?
Well,
what was-
the first issue they ran into was they couldn't get it sync first.
Right.
And long story short, that turned out to be that Reaper where they did the audio recordings in. We also had 64 channels of audio, by the way. And in broadcast, that's a lot, but in live music, that isn't a lot at all. Turned out that Reaper didn't set the bitrate correctly. Final Cut Pro didn't interpret it correctly. There was 7 back in the day. And they couldn't get it sync at all. And turned out I just had to rename some files and then it synced up perfectly. And that was the first problem we tackled. And then you stumble into the next one was that all those cards are called untitled. So we create a little script that added card numbers to cards before offloading them. And then we needed to copy them then to multiple destinations and then to a NAS. And then it turned out it needed to be ProRes for Final Cut Pro and ideally DNX. And then we started working on our own DNX transcoder thanks to BBC's BMX framework. And then, then the whole thing, it's just one long cascade over 5 years of problems turning into I think over 1,000 lines of AppleScript in the end. And then the show was done after 5 seasons.
I have to say, I read a little on your website. I was like 1,000 lines of AppleScript. That's a lot of AppleScript that you built out. So most of this was just really just solving the problem that you had in front of you, piece by piece by piece. And before you finished, you ended up with a product.
Yeah, exactly. And then we thought we had something when we finished that show, and we automated the hell out of it. That was really good for us. We finally could get some coffee, and we thought there would be a market for it. Turned out there wasn't at all because it was way too bespoke a workflow. And I found someone that was willing to put a bit of money into it to at least give me and my co-founder Rulof some time to tackle it full time.
Right.
And we broke it down into several steps. And the first one was, let's copy the data first without issues. And we're still there.
And can you explain a little bit about Hedge?
All right. So the one main issue that we ran into for that production was that we needed to do multiple backups. Back in the day, that wasn't really that normal to do. Most people would just copy off the camera cards, maybe later on make another copy, but we found that quite dangerous with those CF cards that would overheat easily and with so many going on through the day. So we wanted to have multiple copies right out of the gate. And that's the main problem Hedge solved back then. We wanted to create multiple sources into multiple backups all at the same time without creating any bottlenecks. And that was something the software at the time couldn't do. It couldn't manage, like one transfer would eat up all bandwidth, not allowing for others, slowing all down, the whole thing down. We wanted to run everything all at the same time, and it would be fine if it would slow down other transfers, as long as it just kept going and use every bit of bandwidth availavailable.
It seems like a very scary thing to do. As someone who's on site copying things, usually you're very afraid of doing anything other than one file. Like here's my one card or one drive at a time, and you're always.
But that doesn't scale.
Yeah, it doesn't scale.
If you have 15 cameras times 5 cards, because we had 5 or 6 cards per camera, because otherwise we couldn't keep up, and it had to be copied at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
And so it
is this
to
across multiple computers or one computer that has multiple inputs?
There was actually one computer, I think, or 2 at the time. Yeah, we found a great 7-port USB hub by TP-Link that didn't have any power problems. So we built it around those, and we had 2 systems copying to local hard drives and into a NAS at the same time. And we bridged all Ethernet ports on that NAS as well. So it was just getting every last drop of speed from the system.
Right.
And for transcoding, we actually hacked Finder a bit. We wrote another AppleScript that we would run. We demanded all laptops of production, and we ran an AppleScript on each of them, and that would just look at a shared folder. And for green tags, and green tags would need to be transcoded. And when they were done, they would be flagged red or the other way around. The other way around, actually. And then that's how we kicked off multi-computer network transcoding as well. And then we got it going with 50 Macs in total, I think.
That's incredible. And so where has Hedge gone since then? And as we're talking, by the way, if you're watching, just go ahead and throw your questions into Mukana, and we'll keep answering them. We're going to jump to the questions here in just a couple minutes. Anyway, go ahead. But Hedge has come a long way since that original problem, right?
Yeah, we wanted to make stuff elegant. It was really hard to it took us a day to set up all that stuff, and it should be a lot easier than that. So we wanted to make it a really elegant, easy thing, because the reason it's called Hedge is because we saw a lot of throwing across the hedge, as we say it in Dutch. There's a lot of negative communication going on sets and after production, like here's your hard drive, don't bug me again, I have another job to do. We wanted to be that Hedge, let us handle the issues. And we didn't stop building stuff to make that happen. So there's presets now, there's renaming, automatic filtering, basically everything you need to be able to do something good and cool on a day instead of just managing data.
And you have a couple things on your website. You have Hedge, Canister, Full Cat, Checkpoint, Connect. These are all broken out into the sections that are needed to make all of this work.
It depends on the workflow. It can be. Sometimes you need it. Sometimes you don't. We had some customers asking, can you make the same ease of use that you did with Hedge? Can you do that before LTO? And we said, sure. It turned out to be a massive undertaking.
It always does. Everything looks easy until you started doing it, right?
Yeah, but LTO is in a league of its own. Really, yeah. LTO is hard. And then we ran into Full Cat made by Mika at the time of Full Control, and we said, well, that fits really nice with the way we think it should be. And then we basically built that new app together. And then some years later, we stumbled upon Postlab, which was an internal project at a Dutch broadcaster that was completely Final Cut Pro focused. So they built a collaboration suite for Final Cut Pro. And then the manager at the broadcast station was replaced by someone that used to work at Avid. So everybody pivoted to Avid at that broadcaster, and the project was shelved. And we thought that was quite a shame. So we took over the project, and the person working on it, Jasper, the inventor, and then Philippe helped us out a massive load in that first year as well. And that's, in hindsight, that's the Z to the equation, where Hedge was the A. And we're crossing that bridge since. So we're building stuff that helps you get from A to Z faster, or with less headaches mostly.
Well, and it's an interesting mix. I noticed that you have acquired Edit Ready and Scopebox, as well as investing. So this all happened last week, right? Or is it was a big move?
Yeah, it did.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was about half a year ago. Last year was weird, of course, for everybody, not just for people in the industry who suffered massively, but also for a lot of companies, smaller companies like us.
Yeah.
And we pulled through very well in the end, it turned out. And we said we need to bring this to a new level just to give our team more peace of mind. So we said, let's get some investment going on so we can grow the team, to get more people working on the same products, just so there's a bit more thought into it and less haste.
Right.
And at the same time, we were talking to Mike and a lot of people in the industry for years, and Mike had sort of the same thing. Like I'm on my own, and this pandemic hit. That's not the best situation to be in. He has massive knowledge since Scopebox is almost 20 years old, I think, or 15 years old.
Wow, is it really that old? I mean, I've been using it since version 1. But I can't. Yeah, it really is that old. I just haven't thought of it that way before. Yeah.
Yeah, like we're newbies compared to Mike. Really, we're at it for 6 years now, and Mike has been at it for forever, basically.
And I can definitely see the approach that you would have is very similar to Mike's. I mean, I've known Mike since they released Scopebox, and he just has this very focused on how to make it really easy to use and easy to work with. So it's
yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of synergy, and we said, well, we want to go into transcoding. We think QC is going to be a lot harder problem in the future, because Scopebox in the end is a QC product.
Right.
If you look at its roots, and we have quite a vision about where we think the industry will go, and we also have some strict rules on how we approach things. And on top of that is we don't ever want to create a vendor lock-in. So we should never build software that forces someone to keep using it for reasons that benefit us. It should always benefit the end user. And Mike especially edit ready is that thing. It fixes an issue. It doesn't keep you locked into something. It's that assistant that you really wanted to have, that just where you can say, go and fix this problem. Don't care how, fix it for me. And that's what we want to be. We want to be that person that you reach for first.
Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Bill, what do we got?
Sure. The first one comes from Rupert McRae, and I think Paul already dealt with it a little bit.
Yeah, I did. Go ahead, but go ahead and ask.
Okay. Where did the name Hedge come from?
Well, there you go. It's not hedging your bets, what a lot of people think, but it's to throw something across the hedge. And in Dutch, that just means you're making something someone else's problem. And we said that's really that really, well, in the Netherlands, we've seen that a lot on set happening. Like, I don't care, that's not my problem, that's your problem now.
Right.
And we really dislike that negative communication. So we said let software be the hedge. So you start yelling at software, that's fine, that's all good, but don't yell at your colleagues.
Interesting. Next question.
Rupert McRae's done there. Where is Hedge hosted, and can there be different levels of performance depending on worldwide region?
I think that's mostly about Postlab, actually, about the collaboration thing. Hedge is just a desktop app, and it copies data to your local hard drives or network hard drives. But Postlab has cloud storage. It's called Drive. It's built on top of LucidLink. It's a platform for LucidLink. And yes, it really depends on where you are. That's why we have right now 3 regions in the world: San Francisco, New York, and Amsterdam. And we're going to open up an Asian region later this year. And yeah, it really matters. Distance matters with the internet connection. The closer you are to something, the faster it is. And or the way around it is to cache everything or what you need, and then that way you can keep it locally, and then it goes faster.
And can you, for the viewers who aren't familiar with Postlab, can you describe it a little bit?
So Postlab is, I describe it as production management, not in the sense that you plan out a production, but you're working on a production in Premiere or Final Cut Pro or in Avid. And we keep track of the files for you. We do the versioning. We make sure there are no conflicts if you're working, for instance, Final Cut Pro, that you get proper bin locking if you're working on Avid. And you're working on cloud storage. And the special thing about that we call it Drive, is that it's not cloud storage in the typical sense that it's file-based, but it's block-based, just like your hard drive is. And that makes it possible to edit straight from the cloud. And you actually don't need a fast connection, but you do need a connection with low latency. So don't use Wi-Fi, but use Ethernet, for instance. Right. And because that's what your hard drive does as well. It's a really fast, low latency connection, even when the drive is slow.
Right.
And that's been quite helpful last year for a lot of teams that work remotely or work from home or hybrid nowadays.
That's great. Next question. And for our panel, just go ahead and put the questions into the Mukana.
This comes from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas, and he asks, what is Hedge's experience of being a member of the Netflix Production Technology Alliance?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say much has changed, actually, because we are talking to Netflix all the time, and we have been talking to them all the time for years. We show them our new products. We get their feedback. They test new stuff that makes sense for them, makes sense for their productions. The thing is that when they launched the PTA about 2 years ago, we immediately said, we think it needs an acquisition category. And we're really happy that they actually listened to it, and that last week they published quite a large body of work on who does what on set and what type of production requires what kind of workflows. And I think that has been really great, that Netflix has really taken up that glove to make it easier for producers to understand the value of the people doing the work in the end.
Yeah, I find it funny. One of probably the position that we argue the most about with clients is archivist, because we will put an archivist into our shoots. Like there has to be something. They're like, well, can't the camera operators do that? And we're like, no, you need at least one person, depending on what it is, one person or a team to copy that files. That's everything you're spending money on is the files, and so and I think Netflix.
We do hear that a lot back from our customers, that they are really happy that they can finally tell a producer, like, look at this document. It says here, you need someone for this.
Yeah. And I think that, Netflix in many ways has moved production, because of their sheer need to move huge amounts of data with huge numbers of teams. And we're talking to a producer that just said there's 900 visual effects producers and they're 900 short, and their sheer need has really organized a lot of our industry, just that because it comes with such weight, because they're just trying to make it better and faster. That's that's their only real need. And I think we've been very disorganized as an industry for a long time until Netflix kind of came in and pushed a lot of flow through it. Next question.
Jason Bache here on the panel is asking, how does Hedge adapt to accommodate simultaneous backup to targets of multiple speeds and throughputs without burdening the system with unnecessary buffers?
Yeah, that's our secret. Not telling you, sorry. No, I'm not an engineer, so I can't actually give you the real answer. But what Hedge does is that we measure bandwidth and we keep track of what is available where, and if we call it transfer sync. If you would push files to, say, 3 hard disks of different speeds at the same time, they would run out of sync, and we keep track of that sort of delay latency that's being introduced, and we manage that. That helps a lot.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next. Could you see Hedge used for middle-level production, not just high-level production?
Everything we do is for low-level production. We build for the end user, always with in mind. And it's fine if high-level productions use us, but we don't build for them. So yes, definitely is. Internally, we sometimes say Hedge is not for DITs. And that's because we say we want to build for the person that's a camera operator at a wedding shoot that really doesn't have time to do data. Mm-hmm. And that's who should be able to use this. If needed, they should be able to put an intern behind a computer and do it, and should be that simple. And if that means it's possible to use it at the most top level production there exists, great. But we build Hedge for regular Joe in the end.
That's great. Next question.
Neil Goldstein in Tel Aviv, and here on the panel today. Will the trial version allow for file renaming, multiple physical backups with simultaneous saving to a cloud backup app that can beam these files to the cloud? Also, is there a limit on videos for this trial version?
No, the trial isn't limited at all. You can do everything with it that you can do with a full license. If you want to go to the cloud, I suggest using an app like XPenDrive next to it, especially if you're on M1. XPenDrive has made a great new app that mounts remote cloud storage directly into the OS in a new API that Apple built. For the rest, yes, you can do everything with a trial, and then if you don't, let us know, and then we'll help you out.
That's great. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Why does the industry still stick to LTO tape when there are other storage solutions available like portable SSDs?
Because it's great, really. And it's cheap. An LTO machine is far from cheap. It's really expensive, but the cost per terabyte in the end for tape is quite low. The speed is really good. And it's the only medium that actually you can shelf for decades. Like the second I put something on a hard drive or an SSD, I have to consider it being dead, because that's what can happen with an SSD. And especially hard drives are getting healthier and living longer, but with SSDs, you can't take that gamble. So SSD is definitely not meant as a storage medium for long term. And LTO is the only one around that can do that.
Next question.
Rupert McCrae, Dallas, Texas. How has the M1 helped Hedge?
That's a great question. We always say we release support for a new OS or new technology on day one, and we stick to that with M1. And I think that helps us with market adoption, because people ask us, do you already have support for something? We can always just say, yeah, it works. Go try it. Apart from that, not much. Hedge works on everything. So
was the port to M1 or making it native on M1? Is it native? Is it a native M1 or is it? Yeah. And was that hard?
That easy. That easy. Yeah. But that's, I think, thanks to our architecture and our engineering. What it's not like if you run the Final Cut Pro version for M1 that has massive performance gain, or the new Premiere. With Hedge, is so much more low level code deeper into the system that there's not that much to be gained actually, because it's directly talking to hardware.
Right. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas up next with, are there any differences in Hedge features between the Mac and Windows versions?
Yes, we try not to, but sometimes life happens. The recently introduced Sketch integration is still being built on Windows. We didn't want to keep the Mac community out of that for longer. With one part of getting the new investment in is that there will be full feature parity on release day from now on.
That's great. Next question.
Vincent Gerald in Louisiana says, does Hedge work well with multiple sources being backed up to a single destination?
Yeah, that's what it's built for. So we have people copying one card to 15 destinations and the other way around. And people use it even to consolidate hard drives onto a NAS. So they hook up whatever they have and they just start chucking off transfers.
Next question.
Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina says, are you planning on supporting the cloud?
That's a very broad question, but yes. On the roadmap for later this year or maybe early next year is native S3 support and some other stuff. That said, apps like Expand Drive or Mountain Duck are great as intermediates, super affordable, really built for that purpose. And I should say, uploading to the cloud is great through such apps and with Hedge, but don't use it to edit from. Because
we encourage
S3 is not built for file-based streaming.
Right. And for our panelists, just go ahead and put the questions in Mukana. Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California. I have a few M1 MacBooks and Mac Minis. Could I use them with your program to render or export faster with Premiere Pro specifically?
No, because we don't do anything with rendering for Premiere Pro. I think when we fully integrate Edit Ready, and there will be an M1, well, there is already an M1 version, but what we have planned, that would help with that a lot, I think. But that's maybe next year.
Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle. Avid had Unity as the central storage for multiple editors in a building together and fiber cables. Is Hedge creating a cloud-based replacement for collaborative workflow for editorial and post-production?
Not even creating, but we already have it. So it's part of Postlab. We call it remote locking, and it enables Drive to work as a nexus. It identifies as a nexus. And we have multiple Netflix shows, for instance, running on that right now with editors collaborating remotely and also in the office. So you can do a hybrid workflow.
Next question.
Rachel Ann Clifton says, congratulations on the raise. I recently read a tweet calling for testing a beta of Scopebox Plus AJA M1 support. Describe how you handle the feedback from these valuable people. Thank you.
Great question. We highly value our support, and we always want to have a really human touch to it. So everybody that emails us, we start a conversation with, basically. And then either you get a version, or we ask about your workflow, or you ask us about workflow. Anything goes.
That's great. Next question.
Courtney Gooden on the panel from Hollywood. Can Hedge or one of its components sync up dual system ISO audio tracks to the picture using timecode to create a dailies like deliverable during its transfers and backups?
Not today, but as Hedge was originally called the Sync Factory, you can imagine what might happen in the near future.
That's great. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas is up next. Where is Hedge being used in education, and what are the educational discounts available?
Great questions, really. We have a 30% discount for educations, and for institutions even deeper if they need a lot of licenses. And yeah, Hedge is being used everywhere in the world, schools, universities, anything, everywhere, I'd say. So there's no limit to it.
That's great. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. What level of support is available during the 10-day free trial?
Every level of support, all the help you need. Really, yeah, and that goes on when you have a license, and even if you don't have a license, it still goes on.
And if people have any more questions, we're running near the end of our list here, so go ahead and throw those in. Go ahead, next question.
Cloud support. Any roadmaps, asked Stuart Fairweather, any roadmap to include previous office hours guests, including people like Frame.io?
Yes, we already have a Frame.io integration in Hedge, and we are working on a sync integration between Frame and Postlab Drive. And yeah, even there's a lot more on the.
How does the Frame.io integration work?
For Postlab Drive or for Hedge?
For Hedge.
For Hedge, we currently use the Frame.io macOS app, and the watch folders you specify in it show up as destinations in Hedge. So it uses our copy mechanism to push data straight into Frame.io.
Got it. Very good. Next question.
Alex Olegnowitz in Toronto, Canada. When will you support LTO library changers, the actual robot?
Soon, I hope. We have a very nice prototype running in a lab. Yeah, but Canister is really weird. LTO is old. The technology is 30 years old or more, and it's hard to do, but there's so much work we can do and so much stuff we can improve, and libraries is really on top of our list. First, we're releasing spanning next month, though.
That's great. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. Will Hedge be exhibiting at any in-person trade shows or conferences, or will virtual events be preferred?
Great. We were planning on going to NAB. I think we're not going to be there as a company this year because we kind of felt it was a bad move on NAB to move it so close to IBC. We might be there depending on the situation because a lot of our team is in Europe and some of them are in the US. We'll be there at IBC, which is our home game. And next year we'll definitely be there at NIB. And we don't do virtual events because it's really easy to just book a meeting with us. Send us an email and we'll have a Zoom call. And anytime, anywhere.
Next question.
Brian Anderson of Silver Spring, Maryland, here on the panel most days. How long did you rely on AppleScript? Is AppleScript still involved in your code base?
Oh, no. We only relied on AppleScript for that show, Challenge Day. And then the first thing we wanted to do is to make it really reliable. So we completely ditched it and we started writing from scratch in Objective-C back in the day and Swift nowadays as well. So no AppleScript at all.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael again, and this time he says, I remember a press release about SGI working with NASA to build a lab for launch film analysis. Could you see Hedge tech useful outside our industry?
It is being used outside of our industry. For instance, we have power inspection companies that use drones that have a lot of carts going on. Basically, any workflow that is file-based benefits from Hedge. But the need to move data is way bigger in M&E than in any other industry. So yeah, it's being used, but we keep focusing on M&E because, well, you're a great bunch to work with, and it's just much more needed than other industries.
Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas, here on the panel. What is the Hedge licensing model?
We call it paid updates. So you buy a license that is perpetual, that keeps working on your current OS, and most of the time the next one as well, forever. You get support for at least a year. After that year, well, we typically still support everyone. We haven't denied anyone support, but officially it's 1 year support and updates. And after a year, you decide if you want to update, and then it's about 50% of a license, so that's 69. And then you get another year of new features. And we do about 4 to 6 major releases each year. So it's not like we're doing one every 18 months, but it's really continuous new releases. But if you're happy with the current feature set, just continue using that. You don't need to upgrade. There's no subscription at all.
That's great.
Can we stop and applaud for a second?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next question.
Oops, I'm sorry. Moving on, Stuart Fairweather asked the next question. Can Paul share any high-profile use cases he's aware of, such as feature films or TV productions, NDAs permitting?
Well, we don't sign NDAs, so that helps. We typically, if people think it's sensitive, we just tell them, don't tell us what you're using it for. Emily in Paris, the second season on Netflix, is being shot using a complete remote Avid workflow, for instance. There is one very high profile Formula One team that cannot be named that is using it, and they cannot be named as they see us as a competitive advantage. So it goes to show how important it is to them. But we actually, you know what's weird? It's really great to hear from people that it's being used on all these great Netflix shows and whatever is on, Marvel is working on, or Disney is working on, or Apple is working on. But to us, it's about the end users. And if you're shooting, I don't know, an internal education film for the company you work on, or you're working for Disney, it's all the same to us. You still have the same problems, really.
Absolutely. Next question.
Ruben McRae, Dallas, Texas. What are the features of Hedge Connect for iOS and Android?
Right. So Connect is your home away from Hedge. So if you start a transfer in Hedge, you'll get a notification when it's done. You can see its progress. And it was originally built so we saw people at sets sticking to a computer just looking at a progress bar, which is really silly. That's a waste of your time. So this allows people to at least go back to the set or grab some coffee and get a notification when transfers are done, and then pop in the next card so you don't lose any time.
Next question.
Rachel Ann Clifton's up next again with we are all massive fans of Steve Bays and his contributions. Can you tell us what it means to have him on board? Thank you.
Oh, it's amazing. Steve's knowledge is beyond words. There's the great thing about people like Steve and also Estelle, who joined us, and Robin as advisors, is that every situation we've been in, they probably were in as well. And they have just this crazy amount of experience or anecdotes they can warn us about and stuff that might happen down the road. And they have a very clear eye for seeing what's missing.
And it helps that like sight unseen. I this is not a place that I've had to deal with that much, but sight unseen, all I saw was Hedge, Steve Bays. I immediately came back and said, okay, if he's jumping into this, we want to know what they're doing. And so I knew that Felipe had used some of the Postlab, and so it was already kind of, as soon as I put it all together. But between Felipe and Steve Bays and everything else, I was like, I don't even need to look at the website. I just need to have you come on, and I'm really glad we have, because I'm already, this is expensive. This is an expensive conversation for me, to have with you, because I definitely have gone through some pain recently that I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't have this. All right, next question.
Guy Cochran has the same exact question. What's it like to work with Steve Bays? So rather than embarrass him wherever he is, let's just move on to Ranjan Shandil's Los Angeles question. Does Hedge catalog hard drives similar to Disk Catalog Maker?
Not yet, but Canister does. So what we do is, when we have a new technology, we try it on one app first, and then we refine it a bit, and then we bring it to other apps. And catalog on LTO, the need for catalogs on LTO is way greater than for hard disks, because it takes so much longer to mount an LTO. But we are bringing the catalog technology married with FullCAD to all apps sometime next year, I hope.
That's great. Next question.
Cool. Edwin Ruiz of Chicago is in next. Does Hedge offer any email or text notifications once offloads are complete? We covered this a little, but go ahead and talk more, Paul.
No, we just do push notifications. Way better. But you can do it through our scripting engine, by the way. So you can
send
a little
texts and
AppleScript.
emails if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Next question.
Stuart Fairweather, Melbourne, Australia. Is there integration between Hedge and the software for UPS units to pause transfers before the battery runs down?
No, but that's a really interesting idea. Can you email us about it?
Yeah, that sounds great. Next question.
Comes from...
Oh, you muted yourself.
Sorry, there we go. Wrong way. Idris Hedgie in Fairfax, Virginia, I believe. Can you tell us about the encryption and security of the content that is saved on Hedge?
Yeah, it doesn't exist because we don't do encryption. There's been talks about doing encryption for LTO, but typically we found it doesn't really work to do encryption for hard drives, because if you want encryption on those, you just use the built-in file vault for macOS, because otherwise key management is going to be a mess. If you rely on an app like Hedge, you got to know who has the key. So we don't do encryption by design.
Next question. Can't hear you, Bill.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. Is Hedge hiring, and would positions be office-based or remote?
Yes, and remote.
That's great. Paul, thank you so much for your time. We're really excited. We have one more just came in here. We'll ask it. Go ahead. We've got a couple. Everyone's like, wait.
Yeah, suddenly, wait a second.
Yeah, as soon as I start closing it up, they're
Give
like,
me
okay,
1 second. Power up my battery.
Yeah. Okay. What? Two more questions.
Ranjan Shindil of Los Angeles says, your software is beautiful to look at. Who is responsible for that? And any awards we should know about?
Great. It's a team effort, really. We have a UX designer called Barry. He's worked on the initial Hedge, and from that moment on, we built this library of styles, and we keep refining it. So it looks like Hedge hasn't changed over the years, but there have been a lot of tiny refinements, and with those seep into all apps. And it's one big Figma library. We did get an award, not for the app, but we did get an award for most original stand design last IBC, because that was built from, well, basically waste. And we reuse every stand each year. So that was quite a thing for us. But no, there are no app prizes. Mostly, Apple's design awards require you to be in the App Store, and that doesn't work for an app like Hedge on a technical level, because we couldn't be doing what we do in the App Store. So unfortunately not.
Next question.
Brian Anderson is up next, and he says, was LTFS support something added to existing LTO support? Was that a difficult transition?
That's about Canister, I think. So LTFS is the file system that sits between LTO and a Mac. No, there wasn't a difficult transition because there wasn't really an alternative. And yes, it's a pretty hard technology to master, and it's very much in flux, but that's sort of the territory with LTO.
Next question.
Rupert McRae of Dallas, Texas, in for this one with, can Hedge be operated in an offline environment, or is internet access required for licensing and validation?
Only for licensing. And once licensed, you can go offline for as long as you want. When you update or upgrade, you'll need to be online to validate the license. But apart from that, you can go offline as much as you want.
That's
Again,
great.
we don't want to create a vendor lock-in, so you should be able to use it wherever you want.
That's great. Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Can't hear you, Bill.
I just wanted to note, I used Hedge for the first time about 4 years ago at NAB. I was tossed into a situation where I was doing a lot of file management for one of the live shows there. And I can't believe how easy it was and how flawlessly it worked through that. This is 4 years ago. And working with hardware that you don't know and having a responsibility for something like making sure your backups are correct and nothing fails, because the entire live content is going into this for your archive. I can't tell you how incredibly good it felt every time one of those red circular lights on the HyperDecks turned green. I knew it was backed up and everything worked. It was such a simple interface that, like, it's done and it's done right. That's just worth its weight in platinum. So Paul, thank you. You made my show 5 days a whole lot easier than it would have otherwise been.
Well, now that you mentioned HyperDecks, this is the good audience for it. We are working on automatic HyperDeck offloading, and we would really like to talk to some people that use HyperDecks intensively. So if you do, please reach out by email. Just email hello@hedge.video and mention HyperDeck, and then I'll come back to you in a few weeks because I'm leaving on holiday. But I'll get back to you, I promise.
Yeah, we've got a couple laying around. So so that'd be good. Anyway, Paul, thank you so much for your time. It was really, really great to have you.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're definitely going to check out more, and hopefully as things progress, we'll bring you back on if you're interested, and have you we're big fans of what you're working on, and the companies that you've just invested in and purchased and everything else are all part of things that a lot of us use. So it'd be great to keep us updated. All right. Thanks so much. Thank you
for
to our
having me.
and thank you to our producers who are all watching, asking great questions, keeping everything moving forward, and thank you to our panelists for the great conversation that we had in the first hour and the second hour. Now we're going to jump in to we'll see you in a day, or we'll see you in the after hours in just about 30 seconds. All right, thanks. Bye.